Welcome to the Afterglow Yogic Sleep podcast. Today, I'm going to be chatting with Demi Yuill, and we're going to talk about PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. And the idea is that I'd really like to have a chance to chat to Demi, hear what her experience with PCOS has been like. And hopefully, if you're listening and you have PCOS, you can feel like you're not alone. And we're just going to talk a little bit about how that relates to the connection between sort of mind and body and the emotional repercussions that come from PCOS and trying to find stability. And then as an additional thing, just generally chat about, the body, life, things like that. And then I'll go away, design the Yoga Nidra, and be back for part 2, where I'll be giving the Yoga Nidra that can hopefully help anyone with PCOS feel a little bit more connected to their bodies. So I'm going to introduce Demi Yuill, fantastic artist and maker from Scotland. She is a phenomenal human being with a absolutely brilliant sense of humor and a big, big, big heart. And she is very, very generous and delightfully is available to chat to us about her experience with PCOS. So, hi, Demi.
Hi. Thank you for all the compliments there. That was lovely.
I can keep going. If you're not at your max compliment receiving capacity yet, I can keep going if you like. She's also got the most beautiful alabaster skin and the best cheeks on the side of the Highlands.
Love it.
Yeah. So, Dems, I want to hear a little bit about your, I guess maybe let's start with an origin of sort of understanding what PCOS was. Did you have this symptoms for a long time before you even knew what it was? Or did you know what it was and then symptoms started later in life? Do you remember when it was? Also, in addition, can you, if you're comfortable, share things like how old you are now? And obviously, because of the nature of this chat, we're going to get stuck into things like cycles, regularity, symptoms, everything. We're going to dive right in. So, Dems, whatever you're comfortable sharing, let's get straight into it. Tell me a little bit about your sort of initial understanding about your body and having PCOS.
Yeah, so I suppose I can start with my age. I'm 32 coming up in June. It doesn't feel that way sometimes, but yeah, so PCOS kind of started for me a couple years back. I can remember in my early 20s, I was on the pill for quite a long time. So I had been on the pill since I was 15 years old, and I decided to come off of the pill when I was 23 years old. And I just decided that for myself because I just felt like using the pill, it wasn't doing any good on my body. You know, I had been dealing with many symptoms, side effects from the pill. And I just thought, I'll give my body a break and I'll just see how it reacts, basically. And at the time, I just didn't think much of it. I was just kind of going into it with, just kind of seeing where it went, really. And then fast forward a couple of years, me and my now husband were starting to think about maybe starting a family. And at this time, I was kind of having on and off periods, and I thought, oh, this is just a bit weird. It definitely changed. You know, I used to have a regular cycle, but it definitely tapered off when I was in my late 20s. And I started kind of looking into it on my own, because I had kind of experienced other symptoms, and in passing I had saw videos online about hormonal changes that women go through after coming off the pill. So I thought, oh, maybe it's just that. Maybe my body is kind of getting used to its own cycle again. And I thought maybe that would take a few years to kind of happen. And so, yeah, through that, me and my husband started trying for a baby. And I discovered this isn't working. And alongside, alongside all of that, I was having these other symptoms of gaining weight, not being able to lose weight at all, no matter what I tried. A lot of inflammation, so I was very bloated. I was also very fatigued, which is crazy. I have a disability as well, so I have a disability called muscular dystrophy, and that usually affects my fatigue quite a lot. But I found that I was having even more fatigue, a lot more sort of mood changes that you would maybe get through a normal cycle, but these were kind of out with the regular cycle, if that makes sense. And yeah, I wasn't having a period for 6 months at a time. It's kind of still the case, to be honest.
So am I understanding correctly, did the symptoms of PCOS, did they start around the same time that you and your husband were thinking of expanding your family, or was it, did it predate it, but it just became more concerning when
that
you guys were planning
a
on having a baby?
Yeah, it was a realization that, oh, there's something else going on here. Yeah, so I think I started to realize that I had PCOS when we started trying for a baby and nothing was happening. But in my head, kind of looking back at all these other symptoms that kind of lined up to this point, with the weight gain, the bloating, brain fog, things like that, a lot of other symptoms. That's when the light bulb kind of went off in my head. And I decided to kind of do more research on it, and also try and, investigate, try and see what was going on. Unfortunately, through going through the GP, there wasn't a conclusion, to be honest. I had so many different examinations. I now know that there's different types of PCOS that you can have, and yeah, I think the broad spectrum that the GP can kind of search for, it doesn't really suit everyone, if that makes sense. Does that make sense at all? I don't know if I'm like...
No, absolutely.
Talking gobbledygook.
Yeah, but for non-UK listeners, presumably when you're talking about the GP, I'm assuming you went through the NHS, which is the sort of national health system of the UK. And so there are, in many ways it's amazing, and in other ways it can be incredibly restrictive, because there are certain things that doctors, and certain tests and things like that, and procedures that doctors have to follow, that is has a lot less flexibility, because the NHS is trying to do so much. And again, in many ways it is phenomenal, but it does mean that there's a lot more restrictions. So was that what you were experiencing, that there was a problem?
There was just quite a lot of restrictions.
Maybe a problem is not the right word, but okay. Yeah, just in terms of like getting tests or getting clarity.
Getting tests, and also the type of tests that were given, there a lot of things weren't showing up. I know a lot of women who might get an internal scan, and that might show up so to start back to that question, I when I initially went to my GP, I wasn't even sure kind of what it was. I knew that it could potentially be PCOS. And, going in, you just kind of, you don't want to present too much to your doctor. You want to kind of give them the symptoms and them to kind of come to a conclusion. Because obviously they're trained. You're not. You've only done your own research. So I went into the doctors to try and get more information, and also possibly to get a diagnosis just for my own clarity of mind. And I had a couple tests, and there wasn't any cysts on my ovaries that showed up, and that's quite usual with PCOS. I know now that there is different forms of PCOS through my own research. I wasn't informed of that through the GP, but and so they couldn't really come to a conclusive diagnosis. And so that kind of led me back to square one, if that makes sense.
Interesting that you say that, because I had the virtually identical experience. I mean, maybe our symptoms are slightly different, but I had a lot of the PCOS symptoms, and I also had a scan. They said again, same thing. They couldn't find any cysts, but, and I spoke to a doctor, and I really wanted to get hormone tests. I'd had some done in South Africa maybe a few years before, and it showed elevated testosterone. But then when I wanted to get it done at the NHS, they basically said no. And the doctor said, based on your other symptoms, we can just assume that you have PCOS. You're not going to get an official diagnosis, but we can just assume you do. And I think part of the problem is because regardless of whether you have it or don't have it, the treatment is essentially just living a balanced life and getting proper sleep and eating a healthy diet and exercising. And that feels really frustrating, because I do think that there is something nice about knowing exactly what is going on with your body and what your hormones are doing, because I think that it can give you more information, and there are ways in which you can sort of try a little bit more to have some kind of awareness of, which hormones are out of balance or things like that. But it does feel like the sort of standard of care with the NHS is, well, just assume you have it, eat well, get some sleep and exercise. Did you get the same sort of message?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know that it's kind of, obviously they're doing their best and they're doing what they can, but there's a lot of things that it's kind of just putting a band-aid on it rather than treating the symptoms rather than the cause. I think a lot of women who have PCOS, endometriosis as well, who experience that, it's quite a struggle for women in the healthcare system throughout the world, not even just in the UK, with obviously a great national health service. It's it's quite well known, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think it's strange because I think we're sort of kind of in the early stages, I feel, of understanding things that are hormone disruptors. I mean, I know that even just today, I was having a discussion with someone, and they were talking about how the plastic in tinned food has a lot of BPA, and that it's a known endocrine disruptor, which means that it affects your hormones. And it's not just canned foods, it's a lot of things. I mean, there's even evidence that a lot of sort of mass-produced tea bag companies, the tea bags have microplastics in the tea bags themselves, and then that is also a hormone disruptor. And I mean, there's so many different things, and we just don't know what is something that we should be concerned about. and making proactive measures to change, and, you know, buy loose leaf tea, for example, or if it's just so prevalent that there's just microplastics everywhere, and it's like no point in even trying to change your lifestyle, because it's like it's too late. But it does seem strange, because some people just seem to be far more affected by it than others. And so but I guess ultimately, you know, if we're going to talk about these things, what it largely comes down to is quality of life. And for some people, PCOS is manageable, and, you know, they just sort of deal with their symptoms through painkillers, or I don't know, just whatever other things there are. There's only so much you can do for regular cycles. But yeah, so I guess the one of the things that it really does come down to is it does have quite a big effect on you if your cycle is so severely disrupted that your quality of life is impacted. So you mentioned some symptoms in that regard. Feel free to share as much or as little as you'd like, but can you give some insight to a degree that you're comfortable with, in terms of what your cycles are like or were like at their worst, and how much of an impact that had on your day-to-day lifestyle?
Yeah, of course. And as I said previously, you know, coming off of the pill where I wasn't having a cycle, it was quite nice to go back to actually having a cycle. And I know a period is quite a lot of inconvenience for a lot of people, but I really enjoyed having a period. I really enjoyed, you know, it felt like a emotional release in that regard. Yeah, it made me feel better after, and it felt natural. It felt like, you know, it felt like things were going the way that they were supposed to go. Not having a period for so long, as I said before, you know, I started missing periods. I wouldn't have a period for 6 months, and then I would bleed non-stop for 2 to 3 months, and alongside that have iron deficiency. And yeah, there was a lot that happened because of that as well. And I think it completely knocked my mental health out of whack, because, you know, the hormones, my hormones weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, which is regulate themselves. And it felt really like things were disrupted. And even through, I had kind of started to like try and take vitamins on my own accord, outside of, you know, guidance from the GP. I did my own research and started to take different vitamins, like anisotol. That's a big one that a lot of people kind of rave about, that helps PCOS, and other vitamins as well. Just trying to eat healthy, take vitamins, you know, try and exercise regularly, and even with that, I still haven't fully regained my cycle back. And so it's really a struggle just to kind of get that back on track. And I don't know if that was because I was on the pill for so long, or, you know, if my body just has extra insulin, because obviously it's insulin resistance that causes PCOS, among other things. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it does feel like it is one of those health issues that you always feel like you're kind of in the dark around it. Like I've never met someone who's got PCOS and has sort of fully figured out, you know, the primary cause and then addressed it, and they're symptom free now. It feels like the general trend is that everyone's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
It feels like it's lifelong.
Yeah.
It feels like, there's no escape from this, and it is to do with the way your lifestyle is, to kind of alleviate the symptoms. And the symptoms, well, so far I've experienced, never really do go away. They can spike, or they can kind of plateau for a while. Yeah, so that can be really frustrating as well, I've found.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when and when you have a regular period, there is already a level of sort of peaks and troughs of hormonal sort of, reactions that we have to go through as we go through all the phases of the menstrual cycle. And then to have that warped and stretched out, and it's hard enough trying to figure out what's going on in our bodies with a regular, healthy, non-PCOS disrupted menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
And then when it is also disrupted, and there's just this complete question mark as to when it's coming or when it's going, I imagine that adds a lot more, I guess, like confusion in terms of what am I feeling, and what am I feeling things, is this hormonal? Is this external? Is this something else? Why do I feel this way? Is this, is everything connected to the hormone cycle? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it definitely creates that much more of an inability to sort of feel connected to the body, and like you understand what's going on, I guess.
Yeah. And I think as a woman as well, like, having a period is like a big thing for you as well. When you're younger, it's such a big change on your body. And then going through life, you experience different stages, really, and then not having that all of a sudden really kind of throws a spanner in the works. And it really does make you feel out of whack. And obviously things that come along with that, just, you feel like you've lost a part of your femininity, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it's the same for other people, but just not knowing why it's kind of happening. It's a big thing. It's a big hurdle to kind of cross.
Definitely. No, it definitely is. And I mean, also ultimately, we have periods that we can have babies. And in a way, there is this horrible kind of unsettling feeling, which is that, PCOS is something that not always, but in many cases prohibits us from doing the thing that we have periods for. It prohibits us from having children. I imagine that there's an additional layer. I say I imagine because even though I have PCOS, I have not had to go through the emotional journey of trying for a baby and not being able to get pregnant. It's me saying I imagine. But I imagine that adds an element of emotional complexity to it as well. How would you say you feel in that regard? Do you feel angry towards PCOS? Do you almost envision it as like a sort of its own thing, and you could be angry at and say like you're doing this to me? A numbness or another feeling that I don't know. Yeah, what does it feel like having to go through the experience of wanting to get pregnant and feeling like your body just is sort of not on board for whatever reason? How has that affected you, or what kind of emotional journey has that been?
I think I think you're right on the mark there, where you do definitely feel like your body is betraying you in a way. That's how I felt, kind of. I mentioned before that, me and my husband we were trying for a baby for about a year and a half. And yeah, nothing was happening at all. I was tracking I was trying to track my periods. Obviously, yeah, it wasn't working very well. I was tracking it through an app that you can do, taking your temperature, keeping an eye on things like that through your cycle. And nothing was working. My partner actually, he got his sperm checked out. Everything came back okay there, and that kind of put me in a position where I felt like, it's all my fault. Yeah, and it's like you just feel so frustrated because you have no control. You can be taking all these vitamins, you can be eating healthy, eating the things that you should be eating and not budge anyway, doing all the exercise, try and go out, getting some sunshine, and try and be a more proactive person to have that lifestyle, and you just feel like no matter what you do, it's not working. Yeah. And that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
I think especially as a woman, in a weird way at the back of my head, it felt like I wasn't keeping up. I know that this sounds very strange, but it sounded like I wasn't keeping up my end of the bargain, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know if other people would. Yeah. And I wanted to, Yeah, you really want this thing to happen, and no matter what you do, it's not working. And yeah, I think that can be really frustrating. For me personally, I have a disability where physically I am limited, so I experience frustration day to day, and so I am a lot better at dealing with frustration. But I think having PCOS on top of the disability as well, really, it threw my mental health through a loop for a little bit. I think I'm at the stage now where I'm still trying to live a healthy lifestyle, still trying to put all the things into place to try and heal and things like that. But me and my husband decided not to focus on trying for a baby anymore, just because it was so much on my mental health, and it just felt like a constant chore. It felt trying to conceive was a chore and not something that was natural and fun. It's supposed to be fun, but yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah.
Oh my God, no, it makes so much sense. And I mean, I really appreciate you sharing it, because I think that this is, I have no doubt that this is a very common experience to have to go through. And I mean, I'm sure it's not funny or enjoyable for guys if they, if men have sort of low sperm count, or if there's something or other that's restricting their fertility. I don't want to diminish the fact that it would be frustrating for them as well, especially if they're, as very dedicated to wanting to grow a family. But I do think that there is this kind of invisible pressure on women being mothers and maternal and nurturing, and that has its own its own whole other
expectation,
sort of expectation and level of kind of mental gymnastics, and we have to push against that and find for ourselves what works for us and how to feel around in that space and go, actually, yeah, like in these ways I am and want to be nurturing, and in these other ways I'm more than just a mother or a potential mother, you know. And I think that we have so much overlapping and confusing feelings around it, because a lot of it isn't necessarily coming from us. It's like societal, and we have to sort of be very careful how we push back, because if we push back too hard, we could be denying ourselves our own sense of, you know, enjoyment in those areas, because it can be really fun to be nurturing and maternal, and it can also be a burden when it's sort of placed on us prescriptively and with a lot of expectation. So I say all of that to say that I think that it's, you know, it's really important to sort of share these things and to know that this is something that has a lot of mental baggage that comes with it. Of course, you know this, I don't need to tell you, but, you know, there's definitely no sense of you failing in any way. I think that this is kind of part of the journey that we have to go through. And this is one of the things that I hope that a Yoga Nidra can even just a little bit help with, which is that sense that we have I think it's very normal for people to sort of blame their body for not performing in certain ways. I mean, I literally did this last week in a much, much smaller way, in a much more comical way. And I needed to do some recordings, and I had a mouth ulcer, which Americans call canker sores. And it just made it really hard to record. And I just felt like, like my initial response was that I just wanted to be angry at my body, because I wanted to do something and my body wasn't sort of, you know, doing the thing. And I wanted like turn my body on and switch it off. You know, I just wanted to run like a machine and not need anything from me and do the things and tick all the boxes. And I think that so much of the journey of reconnecting with the body through practices like Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is just one of many practices, but connecting to the body really does help us alleviate that pressure in terms of it's not the body's fault, you know. But and don't get me wrong, it's completely natural, obviously, to feel frustrated with the body for my headphone just fell out. It's completely natural to feel like the body is not performing as it should and feel that sense of frustration. But I do think that there is a really powerful thing that can happen when we start to slightly shift that, and we say, okay, my body is forever going to need, it's never going to not need me, you know. And part of that need is really like loving and accepting what it is able to provide, and then having to go through that process and say, okay, body, you're not ready to have a baby. And like finding a way in which we can like fundamentally accept that, and accept that it might never be ready, and that, you know, periods will potentially always be a problem, and getting to that other side where there is a sort of a sense of how can I love my body through this experience? Like, what else is going on in my body, and how can I connect to it and understand it? Even if it's not understanding in the same way that we would understand a sheet from a doctor that has a bunch of different numbers on it that say, you know, your hormone levels are this, or your iron ferritin count is that. You know, in that sense, we can get that sheet from the doctor, and we can have this kind of information written in ones and zeros and whatever, but it doesn't necessarily actually explain to us what our bodies need and what sort of subtle or emotional things are going on. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you really loved having your period because it felt like a natural release, and it felt like it was a way for you to connect to your body once a month. Mm-hmm. And I fully agree. I mean, as much as, you know, we can complain about certain side effects or symptoms of just a general menstrual cycle, there is something really wonderful about it, and it does keep you in a continual conversation with the body, and surrendering to that allows you to really enjoy it. So what I'm basically building to in all of what I'm saying is, I think that, we can fight with our bodies, and we can have these, emotional reactions that we have to sort of almost move through. We have to go through those phases of like frustration or anger or bitterness or confusion or numbness or depression. And then hopefully we can get to a place where we accept that our bodies are these things that we have to love. We are our own babies in many ways, like if our child couldn't perform in some way physically, we wouldn't feel like, oh, you're betraying me. I want a child that can do gymnastics. You would just love the child, and our bodies are the same. And it's like phenomenal how much we really have to remember that and remind ourselves that we are not at odds with our bodies, and that we can actually just accept that, as much as it sucks and we have to go through the grieving process of accepting, but that accepting that the body is not capable of certain tasks, or that it requires more love and understanding than we want to give it, or we feel like we have time to give it. I think that in that practice, it's not enough to just know that intellectually. You have to also go through the practice of sitting with the body and really just releasing it of the burden of our expectations. And I think that to be able to do that and do that consistently, on the other side of it, there is like an enormous amount of freedom that comes from that. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you there. And I think also knowing that your body is on its own timeline, not your timeline. I think that's an important thing to realize. And also that as you were saying, it could be that your body just isn't capable, or it isn't capable right now. I think we compare ourselves so much to other people and what their bodies are doing. But I think, you have to look at yourself and nurture yourself. And I think I forgot to do that when I was first experiencing those symptoms. I was getting so frustrated with all these things that were happening to me, all these, experiencing facial hair and all these crazy things that, feeling like your whole appearance is changing. And you're right, you speak to yourself in such a negative way, and you say to yourself, oh, why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? That. And to say that you are your own child is quite refreshing to hear, actually, because I think we often are our biggest critic, and sometimes it's nice just to be like, it's okay, it's okay that I can't do this right now, and I just need to do what's right for me. Yeah.
And I think, you and I haven't spoken much about Jung. Obviously, you've heard me mention him because, I probably can't make it through one conversation without mentioning Jung. But I don't think we've had like any extended, long conversations about him. But, I think that there really is something to, and you don't have to take a Jungian stance on life to achieve this by any means, but it definitely comes sort of hand in hand with a Jungian approach to things. And it does have this element of, oh, I thought that this is what I wanted from life. And this is to do with the body. It's to do with careers. It's to do with, interpersonal relationships or the passion projects. You can apply this to anything, but it really is that thing of, this is what I wanted, or this is what these are all the expectations that I had. And then having to go through the necessary grieving period of not getting those things, or accepting that you have no control over those things, and learning how to love what is and be taken by the journey that you are on, and allow that journey to happen, because we're so attached to the things that we really wanted from life, and it's not to say that we all need to know how to do that, but it's that in learning how to let go is like where the growth happens, in learning how to accept what is and enjoying what is, as opposed to the other things that we really wanted. That is where the magic happens. That is where we meet ourselves and we discover what we're really capable of, or we form those kinds of really wonderful bonds with the people that we're involved with in whatever that thing is. Or it's how we understand the real task of life. There is something philosophical about having to go through the experience of just not getting what we want, and having to be happy anyway, but it's like the process. You can't skip the process. You have to go through it. You have to go through the bitterness and the anger and the resentment and the depression, and then find that little bit of freedom on the other end. And it's that freedom that goes, okay, I couldn't get what I wanted, but what is available, and how can I love it, and how can I make it mine?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard.
It's a really big hurdle to overcome. But I think, you're right. You have to make it a practice. You need to remind yourself constantly of that, and do things that help towards overcoming that anger and overcoming that grief.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I mean, obviously I still hope that, you hear these stories of people adopt and then they fall pregnant, like a year later. And because I think their body's relaxed and it's settled into a new space, and the pressure's off, for whatever reason. I mean, whatever the circumstances are, we make sense of them. But I obviously hope that you're going to get everything you wanted and more. But I think that if, at the very least, if the prize is accepting our bodies and loving our bodies, then I think we're off to a very good start.
Absolutely.
Before we talk a bit more about connecting with the body, there may be someone listening to this, or multiple people listening to this, who are interested in the adoption side of things, because their PCOS has limited their ability to have kids of their own. And so how is that? What is that sort of story been like for you? Where are you in the process now? And I mean, to keep the body in the conversation, how do you feel? Is there like a sense of relief at making that decision and taking that expectation away from your body? And any other feelings or thoughts you have about adoption?
So to kind of chat about the adoption side of things, me and my husband, we decided not to keep trying for a child, and we decided to look at different avenues. Obviously, I had to kind of grieve the process of not conceiving, because I didn't want to go into another situation where I had that grief from before. So yeah, I had to do some work on myself before I fully went into looking at adoption. And we decided to look into adoption because we had heard so many good stories. There's good and equally bad stories out there. I think everyone's experience is unique to their own. But yeah, we decided just to kind of go into it with open minds and just see what the process was, and just see if this could be an outcome for us. And yeah, so we got in touch with our local council, and they asked us to take a couple courses just to kind of teach us about the process of adoption, and also kind of a crash course on childhood trauma, a lot of different aspects surrounding that. And that became really interesting to me because it was a whole new experience, where it was completely different to wanting to conceive, a biological child. I then kind of turned to, this could be something that I can, put my love that I have, the nurture that I have within me into a child that doesn't have, a family.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I think, yeah, kind of touching on the way that it affected my body, I think it kind of took the pressure off in one regard, obviously, because I wasn't trying to conceive anymore and I wasn't feeling like I was pressuring myself. And now I'm more focused on trying to live that healthier lifestyle, trying to just manage the PCOS symptoms alongside other things, because I want to be a healthy person for this child that I could adopt in the future. It's kind of turned to, trying to conceive, to moving a few steps ahead to, trying to be a healthier parent, which I'm hoping to be in the future. But I definitely feel it's not that the pressure was kind of taken off me, but almost just a different way of looking at the PCOS was realised. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine what a relief that must have been, and just in terms of also just, I don't know, when you just feel like you're not getting anywhere and you just keep doing the same thing, and it can create like that stagnant energy can just create a lot of, I don't know, I feel like it creates a lot of room for a lot of negative mental stuff, self-doubt and criticism and all these things that we've been discussing. And at least, making that kind of decision, it sort of releases the energy away, sort of. I don't know why I'm suddenly speaking in very abstract terms, but I do think that it does. It's like you're not damming that energy up anymore. It's like there's a flow outward now.
Yeah. And going through the adoption, we had a conversation about adopting a child isn't a replacement for a biological child. I think that was a big a really important thing to kind of take inward and understand. And yeah, now I do realise that I can't just replace a adopted child with a biological child. I think, like you say, it's redirecting that energy, and I think just changing up the way, as we were talking earlier, life doesn't go the way that you plan sometimes, and sometimes these things happen to you, but you do just have to maybe change it up now and again, and just try and learn in a different way to kind of love something in a different way. You know, it might not be the idea that you've built up in your head, but you can still have what you want in life. It might just take a bit longer, or it might even just take a different path.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so then I guess that's sort of moving into the sort of final bit of the chat, which is about, so whenever I do these interviews, I like to pick the brain of whomever I'm chatting to get their opinions or sort of get a sense of their relation to the thing, whatever the thing is that we're talking about. And then I take their advice or their lived experience, and I use that to formulate the Yoga Nidra. So I do want to be very clear, though, in terms of connecting to the body. I think that sometimes a lot of self-help things can make you feel like, oh, if you do this, all your problems are gone, or I've done it, look at me, I'm amazing. And I just want to say at the top of this, like, that I'm not selling that at all. And I don't think you are either. I think it's more a thing of like empathizing with what is. And I don't think that there's any magical cure for these things. I think that at best, what we can do is try and create a different space, a space away from the thing that's creating difficulty. And we can strengthen ourselves in other areas, and that can support the weight of the thing that is sort of troubling. For example, in this case, PCOS. I don't think that we're going to, in any shape or form, do a Yoga Nidra that's going to cure PCOS. But what we can do is we can discuss how to strengthen the relationship between the body and the mind and the emotional body, and in doing so, create a better supportive system so that PCOS doesn't impact. We can reduce some of the negative impact of having PCOS, like feeling disconnected from your body, like feeling like your body is failing you, like feeling anger, like feeling trapped. All of these things, I think that we can alleviate some of those really intense emotional and mental reactions to PCOS. I also don't want to be like, in any shape or form, presenting you or me as having fully solved this. You know, we're on our own journeys. We're going to have our own ups and downs, good days, bad days. And I definitely don't want to come across as like, oh, you know, we've solved it. Because I think that would be very disingenuous.
And I think, you're right. It's about trying to learn healthy coping mechanisms for that, because these things can be lifelong. They can be something that you have to work on for a long time. And I think Yoga Nidra is something that you can take and just to calm your mind and all this craziness that's happening to your body. So I think you're completely right.
So I mean, because I think we also we love making narratives, you know. It's like we love saying, okay, 1 + 1 = 3. It's like, I have PCOS, it's affecting my life negatively, therefore my body is trash and I hate it. It's like, no. Why are we doing that? Why are we jumping to that? Like, you know, it's so, but it's like we all do it. It's so like nobody. It's so
common.
Like, totally.
It's just you think that your body's out to get you, and you think you think this is happening to you because of something, but it isn't. And a lot of people are dealing with it, and that can sometimes be a comfort knowing that other people are dealing with it too.
Definitely. I think you've just said something so important. You've said something that, like, it hadn't occurred to me in this conversation until you just said it, which is you were saying, like, it just happens, you know, it's not like something like, you know, it's not like a punishment, I think, or something like that. And I think that in so many aspects of our lives, but especially when it comes to health, I think that we struggle with the fact that some things are just random. Some things there is a cause, you know, like if you eat, like, I don't know, if you live off of McDonald's food and you never eat a vegetable, you know, you're probably going to have some problems. But like, for the most part, I think so many diseases, they do just kind of knock on your door one day, and you lived a perfectly healthy lifestyle up until that point, and you didn't do anything wrong. And I think that it can feel very tempting to want to try and solve the problem. And when there's no direct, obvious cause, we then start to think in these kind of magical ways, like, oh, this is punishment, or, you know, there's some thing that, you know, I'm being denied of, or we try and seek more abstract answers. And I think it's because there's a discomfort with the fact that some things are just random and they don't necessarily have a cause, or if there is, we'll never know what it is. You know, I mean, maybe in 100 years from now, we realize that PCOS is caused from, I don't know, you know, like Wi-Fi or something. Peanuts, exactly. Like, it's possible, but for the best of our knowledge right now, we know that there are things that disrupt hormones, and that we know that there are like obvious reasons why stress is incredibly bad for us, especially chronic stress. And there are things like that, but there is also this element of just randomness, and it doesn't have to be that we're good or bad people to get this, to get a disease, to get some kind of problem like this. And I think that as humans, the human mind doesn't like that, you know, we like knowing, no, you know, this is why. We like having a concrete answer to things. So, yeah. So anyway,
we like
I guess
to fix problems. We like to know why things are happening. And I think you're right about stress as well. I think that is such a big thing with PCOS, you know. I think when you have high insulin, your cortisol levels also come into play. So I think stress can really play a huge factor on your health as well. And trying to manage that is a big thing alongside other stressors in your life. So I think you've hit on the head there. It's stress is really a big factor in that as well.
Yeah.
And pressure. Pressure on yourself can't help that.
No. And I think we all have this, right? Where it's like, okay, I need to be less stressed, so I need to add all of these routines or structures to my life so that I can reduce my stress. But then we obviously fail at doing all of those things, and then that just creates more stress, and we just feel like bigger pieces of poop, and we're just like, oh, well, you know, why bother? So yeah, and that's why I do think that, again, this is a very Jungian lens, but, you know, the answer it's not the opposite. It's always a third space. You have to look at it on the diagonal, right? So it's like the answer to, you know, a Yoga Nidra to support PCOS is not going to be a Yoga Nidra that's trying to cure PCOS, but it's going to try and give you strength to maintain and manage your life better with PCOS, just in terms of not falling down these emotional and mental spirals. And it's the same with stress as well. It's like, we're not going to alleviate stress by trying to add all these things that are obviously going to create stress. You know, we have to think of a third thing, and it's got to be to the side. There's a great quote by the poet Emily Dickinson, which is "Tell the truth, but tell it slant." And I do think that when we approach things at a diagonal, we have much better results, and we don't tend to do that. We tend to try and do whatever the equal and opposite thing is, or we try and match things. But there is something really magical that kind of takes place when we try and approach things by thinking outside of the box and having like a lateral approach. And we go, okay, right. So if I need to reduce my stress, I need to like do more of these other things, whatever, or I need to do less. And we get caught in this kind of, this sort of like, it's one or the other, but a Jungian approach is like, it's neither of those. You got to step out of it entirely. You're going to drive yourself mad by just bouncing between this, like, is it this or is it this? No, it must be this. No. Maybe it was this in the first place. Maybe I just need to go back to that thing and try even harder. And it's like, that's like a recipe for so much disaster. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's self-sabotage as well. Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah, totally. If you were going to do a Yoga Nidra on PCOS, what would be something that you would really like to experience in it? Is there something that you would be like, oh, that would be really comforting, maybe, or is there something that would maybe stress you out that you would not like about it? Like, for example, maybe you would really like to be very in your body, and you would like to have a sense of being connected directly with the physical reality of your body. Or would that be really stressful? Do you think you would prefer to try and sit in like a more emotional sort of space of like, how do I feel in my body in terms of like, what is my emotional tone towards my body? Or would that make you feel really stressed out?
So where I'm at just now with my PCOS, I feel that I've moved on mentally. I've had these symptoms for a while. I'm still going through it. Things have changed, but I definitely think Yoga Nidra might help with kind of looking internally and in my body, not so much mentally, but just starting to feel like I'm connected again. Because like we were talking about before with my period being gone for a long time, I think that being connected with my internal would really be helpful. I think for people going through this, definitely mentally and physically, I think both would be beneficial. But I've overcome a lot for myself. I still obviously have to do work alongside that, and so maybe that would help too. So I really think an all-rounder would be great.
Okay, it's a little bit of everything.
A little bit of both, I think. Yeah. Something where you can, maybe just focus on your body and then focus on your mind. Focusing on different aspects, because when you have those physical symptoms, I think a lot is going on mentally as well. And to first address those physical symptoms and then kind of check in with yourself and say, well, like, how am I feeling about this? I think that would really help.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that I think a lot of these sort of meditation practices and body connection things, a lot of it is like you're telling your body how to feel. You're telling your body to relax. You're telling your body to feel safe. You're telling your body to, or your emotional body as well as your physical body, to be open, and all of these things. And that's just feels like it feels like the opposite of what we're discussing. It's like,
Yeah,
no, because
yeah,
what if my body feels very closed and it feels like scared? Me
yeah,
telling it
intense.
to feel exactly. Me telling it to feel calm and relaxed and open, it's just going to make me feel even more separated and more sort of, or it's going to increase the feeling of like how do I phrase this? Because there's too many me's in this. Like my physical body is going to feel, I imagine, frustrated that I'm still not listening to it. And I mean, it's like I've had this where I've gotten a massage and I just feel so tense because I'm like, why do I not feel relaxed? And then it's
Yeah,
like, that makes me feel so much more tense. And it's like, well, no, maybe it's just that I need to really sit in the space of acknowledging what my body is now. It's like, and it's that going into that space of Yoga Nidra and saying, where are we? Like, hey, body, hey, emotional body, like, what are you feeling? Oh, you're feeling really closed. Oh, you're feeling really unsafe. And some of that feeling is coming from me. Like I'm thinking negatively about you. So of course you're going to feel like tense or bad or whatever. And it's like, it's very layered, obviously, but it's like in that space of Yoga Nidra, I think that could be, I think exactly what you've just said is really helpful because it really does make me think of how much of a burden we're putting on our bodies when we're like, be calm, just
yeah.
relax. And it's like, oh my God, don't tell me to do that because I don't know how. If I knew how, I would, you know?
Yeah, and it's almost reaching into that conscious, and maybe you don't think about it every day when you're going through these symptoms, but really sitting down and kind of going through Yoga Nidra, I think it would help to kind of just to say to yourself, this is happening to me. You know, it is an unfortunate thing. It's almost
Mm,
like it's almost a form of therapy in a way.
mm,
It's yeah, I really feel like it would help to kind of connect you back to your body. And you know, if your brain and your body is like a bike, really. If the front wheel isn't working, the back wheel's stuck. You know, you have to kind of work on both to get the bike moving again.
I love that
Yeah,
metaphor. I
yeah,
love that metaphor so much.
yeah.
I'm
It's
can't
true.
wait to use it. Yeah. That's so true. It really is. It's so true.
I think as you're diving into that, even just your your brain kind of going through the trauma that you've experienced through
Mm,
your aging body, I think that's a really good thing to kind of tap into, because you know it can all happen so quickly, and things can change on and off. There's always a different situation with PCOS, so I think
mm,
yeah, having them tap into their bodies
mm.
um and just kind of see where they're at and what their mental thinking is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sort of changing the like because we typically our bodies give us symptoms and then we have an emotional reaction towards our bodies based on those
Yeah.
symptoms. And I think that it's like trying to redirect that in the Yoga Nidra. So it's like our bodies give us symptoms because it's asking for help, you know, or it's asking for love and tenderness. And then it's like how to find that capacity within ourselves to accept that our bodies just essentially do just need an endless amount of love and care, and that it is difficult, and trying to also just like accept that it is, you know, it's a frustrating task, but like figuring out how to do that in a way that feels sustainable. um yeah, I think that's
No,
that's part of the task at hand.
and sending love to those areas that are causing you issues. You know, your stomach, your I experienced hair loss as well, and so I've tried to kind of send love to that and do other things for that as well. I think you're right. Sending love to those areas really, instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm ugly, I'm fat," or it's really just diving into feeling like this is my body and I'm going to love it the way that it currently is.
Yeah, it really depends where you are on that journey. I mean, there's so many ways in which, like, dealing with just chin hair that just seems to have a life of its own and is like determined to be free and in the world, and you're like, no.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I experienced growing a mustache for the first time in my life, and at the same time losing hair on top of my hair. So I'm just like, why are you redirecting up to the top?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I know. And I think that, I mean, look, I don't know any of this. What I'm about to say, and I should say this as a disclaimer for the entire episode, neither of us are medical practitioners, and anything we're saying is just entirely just a conversation, and obviously all decisions made around your health and your body you should do with consulting a doctor. And so what I'm about to say is especially that, because I don't have any scientific evidence. It's just a hunch that I have with my own body, and it's not applicable to anybody else, to the best of my knowledge. But because I have elevated testosterone, and I think that is a common symptom with PCOS, I think that it does mean that, it's like that's what causes the facial hair and then the hair loss on the top of your head. And it's so, it's like such a, excuse the pun, but it's such a head scratcher because it's like, why is this happening? Why am I just becoming like just all the things that are essentially kind of feminine or, whatever about being a woman and having a period. And I also want to be very inclusive here. I mean, I try as much as possible to use the language of like people with PCOS, because obviously you don't have to be a woman to have PCOS, but it's that thing of like, you land up also having to be challenged on this other level, which is your gender representation. And regardless of where you are on the spectrum of gender, it's a strange thing to get comfortable and learn how to live in a certain sort of way, and then your body changes outside of your intentions or control, and that does affect your relationship with your gender, and you have to go through this experience of being like, oh God, like I'm not this like feminine fairy, there's this man inside of me that wants to come out through my chin hair and my mustache, and it's like, oh God, okay, hey, well, I guess that's something I have to deal with now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's a real excuse the language, but it is a real mindfuck to have to figure it all out. Yeah.
No, 100%. I agree. And in term to bring it back to the Yoga Nidra, I think just having something that will be there for you to kind of alleviate that anger and alleviate that frustration of everything else that's happening to you. Although it's, we laugh about it, and you know what? Sometimes if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry. I think I've definitely cried about it a few times, but really getting to that space where, you can have almost a sense of humor about it and be like, in humiliation, I think that it's okay to have chin hair. Like, it's okay. This is just happening to me, and just feeling it. And yeah, I think Yoga Nidra will help to kind of get you to that place as well. You know, just
Definitely.
to get back to yourself and not feel like you're constantly having to chase this idea of who you've built up in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's that continual thing of I'm not who I want to be. I am who I am.
Yeah.
And making a practice of loving that, and it's yeah. And ultimately, I mean, that's really the best thing we can do for our stress levels. Yeah. Okay. Well, Dems, this is such a wonderful conversation. I feel incredibly grateful. Thank you so much for being so open and for sharing. And I think, well, I hope that anybody who listens to this who has PCOS, wherever they are in their experience and figuring it all out, I hope that you feel the comfort of knowing that you're not alone, and that we're sending out, you know, all the best vibes and love, and hope that everyone just loves their bodies a bit more and feels just a little bit less constrained by having PCOS. And also, in addition, Dems has a great Instagram. She does all sorts of things. She's an artist and a maker. And I know that we were just talking before this recording about the how she's getting really into lithography, which is so cool. So if you want to follow Demi on Instagram, Dems, can you share what your Instagram handle is?
Yeah, my Instagram is at Demi Yuill Designs, and the way that you spell that is DemiYuill, and then it's just designs at the end. Thanks again, Ella. It's been an absolute pleasure to join you on this and to kind of just talk openly. You know, I'm just an open book when it comes to this, and I think anyone experiencing PCOS, I think just go on your own journey. I think it's really helpful to listen to other people, talk about their experiences, but I think ultimately you have to do what's right for you, and just love yourself and love your body, and
yeah. Thank you so much, Dems. And I echo all those sentiments. I'll let you know when the episode is out. And I really recommend anyone listening to this and to both me and Demi to, after this episode ends, to go and get some chocolate and just enjoy something comforting and soothing, because I think that as much as it is so nice to have these kind of emotional conversations and there's a lot of relief, I think that it can also just feel so, they're intense. It's intense to sort of have to sit in these spaces. And even after the Yoga Nidra, for anyone who does the Yoga Nidra, just have some chocolate, you know, get some comfort, a little bit of sugar, hot water bottle, whatever works. Cup of tea. Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I'm sending you so much love, and I hope that your day is incredible. And thank you again, Demi.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this weekly companion episode. It really does add to the experience that you will have in Yoga Nidra. The Yoga Nidra will be uploaded in a few days, giving you time to reflect on the questions that I've asked you. Please subscribe to receive notifications for this new Yoga Nidra episode as well as for future ones. Thank you for adding your light and kindness to the world and for doing this important inner work. May the afterglow be as bright as the journey is deep. See you soon.